All right, now we're recording the Skype call. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
I just wanted to make sure that we're on recording, so we don't go on for an hour and go like, oh no, it's not actually recording.
All right, everybody say exactly what you said at the exact same time.
Yes,
Mhm.
it'd be perfect.
It'd be just as funny. Definitely laugh as much. And welcome to Netflix and Kill. Yes. Oh, Travis, I'm in a fanciful mood today.
Are you?
Yes. I'm in a fantasy type mood. I'm into talking about orcs, dragons, centaur creatures, and all that good stuff. But I'm also into some street gang violence as well. So I'm really excited to be talking about our film today.
Okay.
But who is talking about this crazy mashup film? Well, it's me, Nick, the Merc with a mic, and my fellow unapologist,
Travis.
God of the Pod himself. We're unlikely mashup if I've ever seen one as well, so that's pretty fitting.
What, two white boys?
Yeah, I've never heard one of those ones on a podcast before.
No, never.
And who have we brought on for us as a guest this week? Why, another white guy. So yeah, we are really pushing the boundaries here.
I mean, you do have like a point on the diversity scale with like me being a queer white guy, so I don't.
There we go.
I'll take it. I'll take
In our
it.
favor.
Yeah, all right. So that lovely voice right there is Pher Struz. Say hi to the people, Pher.
Hi to the people, Pher.
I am so excited to be talking with Pher again. He's always a pleasure to have on.
I don't think we've spoken since last year. Am I right, guys?
Last year. That is the high level of comedy that I expect
myself out.
when I call upon Mr. Struz.
Like 3 days, that joke actually lets you get away with it. After that, no more.
We will talk about this later. But he is no stranger.
Glad to talk to you again.
Yeah, absolutely great. If you've not heard his stuff before, he's been on a couple other podcasts as well as run some geek conventions and stuff. Is no stranger to the geek community, and just overall around nice guy. Also, you have the I forgot the name of your album, your comedy album because you are a comedian. Everyone is having so much fun. Yes, I got it. All right.
Available on Spotify and iTunes, and hopefully within the next 3 months, physical copies wherever you may find your comedy albums.
Great. And speaking of everybody having so much fun, not everybody was having so much fun with the film we're talking about today, which is the fantasy gang violence film Right.
Officer Ward, what happened?
I got a dude in my car, and the whole world is watching.
Our nation's first orcish police officer.
I can't fuck up my pension.
Hey, don't get me stabbed.
Live orcs always gotta be the bad guys.
Danger. I don't fit in, I'm a stranger.
So that night, we responded to a 415 disturbance call. Immediately took fire.
You all right? No holes?
Only the ones I was born with. Are your holes?
The fuck can you make a shootout awkward?
Believe I can take out all the evil.
It's a magic wand.
This is like a nuclear weapon that grants wishes.
And it just went really sideways from that point.
Only magic strike and kill.
Look, I didn't put it through the struggle just to let a little trouble knock me out of my position.
The devil is coming.
We have to protect the wand.
So I need to know that you got my back.
You a cop first or an orc first?
It's time to end this.
Fuck it. I want to die.
Let's do it.
We're going to titty bar gunfight die.
How did all my dreams turn to nightmares? How did I lose it when I was right there? Now I'm so far that it feels like it's all gone to pieces. Tell me why the world never fights fair.
Butterfingers. We were doing so good.
Someone take me.
Are we friends?
I think we should spend our time just trying to survive this shit.
house forever.
I need you to take your fat, Shrek-looking ass back the fuck home to Fiona. All right?
Yeah, that was. I'm glad we're talking about that right away, because I think right now we're in such a wormhole of movies that like critics love but fans hate, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean, we just had Star Wars: The Last Jedi, which was pretty much the exact opposite of this film.
Right.
The critics love that movie, but fans don't seem to be digging on it. And this one seemed to be very opposite. Critics were across the board pretty miffed about Bright, and fans, regular viewers, seem to embrace it. And
I think as I checked this morning, and as of this morning, the critics on Rotten Tomatoes had given it a 22% overall, and for the fan vote, I think it was in the low 90s.
Wow.
Yes, it is.
That's pretty disparaging.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen disparaging, reports on that as well too. Usually it is kind of like the critics love a movie, and then the common conception is like, well, audiences weren't ready for it, or they didn't embrace the message, or whatever this one is. I don't really have a sound theory for why this one had the disparity it had. I mean, I do have a theory, but why do you think that critics weren't digging on this film so much?
Well, I mean, I think like right off the bat, I'm going to say without any sort of prejudice here, David Ayers is absolute trash. I mean, David Ayers is hot trash. The guy can't really, I mean, like, he can't pace a movie to save his life. He's kind of like Zack Snyder, but with less writing ability in my mind.
Wow, that's an insult.
Damn.
Yeah, and so, I mean, like, and just with the way that he treats his actors, I think he's hot trash. And so I think right away that's a strike against it. Because, I mean, the last big movie we saw from him was, I believe, Suicide Squad, correct? Has he done anything?
It was. That was the last one from Mr. Ayers, that's for sure.
The technically Oscar award-winning Suicide Squad.
God, I hate that. I hate
Please.
we have to fucking mention that.
Always put the technically in front of that. It is very important.
Killer Croc won over a goddamn Star Trek movie. What does this world come to?
Yeah, unreal. But so I think that's a strike against it right away. But I think with a movie like this is that critics see something with this concept where they say, oh, it's going to be a fantasy setting in a modern time, all of this stuff. I think right away they expect a little bit of high fantasy, and this was really anything but.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was good fantasy. It was great fantasy even, but you can't go into it looking for a movie that's going to blow you away like Lord of the Rings in modern times. Like, it's not going to be that. And I think maybe that's what the critics were potentially expecting. Now, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of things wrong with the movie. As mentioned, the pacing was garbage, and I would have loved to have been able to see those action scenes, but it was so dark throughout that whole movie that you really couldn't. But other than that, I mean, I went into the movie not with the critic mindset of, I'm about to see a movie that takes place in modern LA, and it just happens to be all these fantasy creatures running around in a modern setting. And what I got was a fun movie that was just an enjoyable film to watch. And I think that's what, unfortunately, critics, they don't have that luxury. They've got to actually sit down and critique the movie and pick it apart, which is what they're paid to do. But as somebody who is a fan of fantasy, was able to sit down and say, oh yeah, this is enjoyable. I like seeing this world that they created.
So, yeah, my theory is very similar to that, in which that critics came into this movie having a higher expectation of what the film could have been. And it's a criticism that sometimes will happen when you go into a movie going like, oh, this film could be this, but then it doesn't turn out to be that thing. And you're judging it based off the movie you thought it could be rather than the movie it is. And unfortunately, I have done that this time around.
Yeah, me too.
And I know that that's wrong, but I can't help not like thinking that to where the point where I was just during this movie, I was like, oh man, it would have been really cool if they had done something like this during this scene. And I kept doing that over and over again, and I couldn't stop myself. And I think that's what really made, and I think that this film is, I mean, for me, it's pretty all right. Like, I think it's the main thing that I feel weird about talking about it, and then I'm kind of like, don't know what to say, is that it's just not, for me, it's just not great, and it's not terrible. And normally those are the most interesting films to talk about, because I have a lot to say about a great film or a terrible film. And this one is just so down the middle that I'm like, oh man, I just don't want to nitpick this thing to death or anything like that, or talk about stuff that ultimately doesn't matter. And if I had to say something, if there is an overall problem to it, I think it's just, it doesn't try as hard as some other films. It doesn't swing for the fences enough to even be as bad as it could be, but it also doesn't mean it doesn't take the chances to which it could really be great. But let's talk about the plot structure overall, because this film is starring Will Smith and Joel Edgerton as buddy cops. And Joel Edgerton...
Buddy cops, I would use that term loosely.
Well, they get there at the end, I feel like, but it does start out kind of like the Training Day end of watch, where two guys are in a car and they're kind of antagonistic, but they're ultimately have to work together. And Joel Edgerton is under a oppressive amount of makeup. And what I say about some of the effects in this movie is that the orc makeup effect is really good. Mm-hmm. I really like the practical orc makeup. Especially when it comes to our main character, Nick Jacoby, played by Joel Edgerton, who might actually be the most distinctive I've ever seen him. Like, I'm like, oh, that's, now I can have a role where I remember, Joel Edgerton from, where I'm not just trying to remember I'm like, wait, are you Sam Worthington or, Jai Courtney? Or which are you? Which white guy are you?
That's how I felt too, because he's one of those actors where you're like, God, he was that one guy in that one thing, and he was great in that one movie. If you tell me what movie he was, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, he was awful in that film. But like, this is, I think he was probably, maybe even a better role than Will Smith was in this movie. I think he definitely worked with what he had and killed it, I thought.
Yeah, I was actually really impressed with Joel Edgerton in this movie, because he's playing an actual character of this orc, who wants to be the first. He's the first orc cop. And he is partnered up with what's his name, Daryl Ward, who might as well just be named Will Smith.
Right.
There's just not, and Will Smith is guilty of doing this a lot. And let's be fair, we do like watching him be Will Smith, but it has gotten to the point where it's like he doesn't even try and put on another type of character. We also have Noomi Rapace in this film as Lila. We have, Edgar Ramirez, some other, actors that I couldn't recognize or couldn't tell you who they...
show in a non-comedic role, which was weird to me.
Yeah, and so, and there's a lot of actors that I can't really tell you who they were in the film because they're under so much orc makeup. Like, Brad William Henke is in here, and I love, he's a great character actor that I love. I can't tell you which orc he was. I have no idea.
But he's in there.
He's this big actor that I really like to see because he's got a really impressive presence, but I'm like, yeah, underneath all the orc makeup, I couldn't tell who the hell he was.
I think right away too, that's just a testament to the movie, is that you're not distracted by the actors under the makeup, because I hope, and I don't know, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong on this. I don't think a Netflix movie has been nominated for an Oscar up to this point. Is that correct? Am I wrong?
I'm pretty sure none have been nominated before, and usually it's because
make a run for best makeup, hands down.
I'm not sure how the rules are. I'm thinking your movie has to play in theaters at some point for it to qualify for an Oscar.
I would love to see a couple for your consideration cards sent out for this movie just for makeup.
Mm-hmm. I really do enjoy the makeup of the film. I really wish that some of the other effects held up a little bit better as well. This was an expensive movie. It was like $90 million.
You would know it by looking at some of those action sequences, though.
No.
Okay, so let's talk about the action sequences a little bit. Because this is an action movie, like we talk about, like it's also, of course, an obvious racial allegory for the orcs being the lower class, if just directly related to the black community.
I'm super excited it wasn't as heavy-fisted as I thought it was going to be at the beginning, though.
Well, in the beginning, you're like, oh man, is this gonna be the movie the whole time where it's like super on the nose? But then later they kind of like let it go, and they traded in for a traditional action film, which does like this. If you were hoping that David Ayer learned from his mistakes in Suicide Squad about choppy editing, and
the Academy Award winning.
Yeah, he won an award for that movie. Why would we learn anything?
The Academy Award winning Suicide Squad didn't win its award for editing, I might add. And it shows here is just like, I think the most memorable action sequence I remember was Will Smith shooting 4 cops in slow motion when the obnoxious song playing, because that's the one I remember everything that happens in it because it's shot in slow motion with a stationary camera. So I'm like, oh, that's pretty. I can actually remember what happened there. Otherwise, it's does the shaky cam thing with the really, really dark lighting. Like, it's so dark lighting. You have to be, if you're watching this at home, you better watch it at night with all the lights off. And like, we tried to watch it during the day, and we had to we really had to turn up the contrast and try and figure out during some of these scenes, like, what the fuck is even going on?
I know. I guarantee that fight scene in the strip club would have been so much cooler if I could have actually fucking seen the thing.
Yeah, that would have been a good fight scene.
Well, it does the cool cop thing of them going back to back, and I'm like, oh, I'm a sucker for that 80s shit. And I'm just like, yes, back to back fight scene. And I mean, another thing I do like is that Will Smith being Will Smith, I still like the camaraderie between Joel Edgerton's character and his character. I do like that, during the downtime in this film, they do have like kind of a breakdown of like, hey, this is what I'm mad, like, this is what I'm mad about, and like, and unsure of our partnership, and this is what, like, there's like a big conflict where Will Smith was shot in the opening sequence of this, and he's been spending a bunch of time recovering, and he kind of blames Joel Edgerton for not having his back at that point. Or for later, we were thinking like he's suspicious of letting the perp even go because the perp was an orc. And yeah, so it's surprisingly heavy drama for the in the middle of this fantasy action film.
Well, and I think that makes it work though, because so one of my favorite stories of an actor ever is Michael Caine talking about being in A Muppet's Christmas Carol, and they said, how, Mr. Caine, how did you do it? And he said the trick was just to act like I wasn't acting with Muppets. And the way that everybody interacted with each other in this movie sold it for me, because they're all acting like they're not acting with orcs and elves and centaur cops and and all of these like bizarre out there fantasy creatures, and it's amazing. And that's one of the first things I said too, is like, I'm so glad that they're delivering this in a deliberate way and not like, oh, hey, orc jokes, like that kind of thing. It worked really well, and it was so cool to see them act as though they were in just a regular old movie and not in a fantasy world kind of setting.
Yeah, I did find that very very surprising, where everyone is playing it very straight. I think I did appreciate that overall.
Well, until they got to the point about talking about prophecies.
Well, yeah, I mean, they slipped in the prophecy thing there, which at first I thought was pretty funny. It was just like, oh man, they're still slipping in chosen one prophecies in this whole story here. Because at first the main crux of the film, we failed to mention before, was that they find a magic wand, which is a big no-no contraband magical item in this universe.
Well, it's basically a nuclear weapon
that grants wishes. Okay, yeah, that's Max Landis, what the fuck, man? That's a stupid written line. That is a dumb line. If you're writing and you write the line, it's like a nuclear bomb that grants wishes. Maybe go back and do a second draft, my friend. Get another pair of eyes on there.
Maybe writing isn't your thing.
But it was, I really did like when the wand comes into play and the chosen, like they managed to mention that most brights are elves that can actually hold and control a magic wand, but every once in a while a human can do it, but most of the time they just blow up in a great spectacular fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they say that, you kind of go, I wonder who in this film will be able to grab and use this wand.
Chosen one!
At any point.
Right, that was the least shocking reveal at the end. Like, that was...
So, yeah, there's the whole Chosen One narrative. So, also where this film kind of falls down for me is in the writing aspect, not just because of the dialogue, which is sometimes written so eye-rollingly, like, oh, really, come on? But most of the time is the standard cop kind of, hey, why you gotta have my back, dialogue sort of thing. I think what really bothers me is that every once in a while I'm like, man, you could have used this moment to say something different. Like, you could have really Zootopia this up and been like, because they're centaur cops, like they just dropped that in out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, that's fucking cool. And then when they have a SWAT team come in later, I'm like, oh man, what if the SWAT team was like a bunch of centaurs that thought they were better than all the other cops because of their superior athleticism? Kind of like a parallel for SWAT teams and how aggro they are in real life compared to regular cops.
Well, we gotta remember that Max Landis is not only a terrible human being, but he's also not the best writer in the world, as evidenced by the line right away, like with, I think in the first 10 minutes of the movie, fairy lives don't matter today. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, that was a pretty bad one too, wasn't it? Like, I love how they never even brought back fairies until the very end too, because it's like, well, fairies exist and they're basically pests.
They don't really, do anything with this world. I think that's the biggest disappointment I have with that. And I already heard talk that they're making like a featurette being like, hey, we're going to go through the backstory of this world. I'm like, oh, you mean that thing that should have been in the movie?
Well,
okay.
every once in a while they drop...
It exists, yeah, they did that.
Well, every once in a while they drop information about this world where it's like, okay, so in this world, instead of Christianity, 2,000 years ago, orcs and elves had this big fight, Lord of the Rings type fight, in which the orcs chose the Dark Lord, and the elves chose the Bright Lord or whatever the hell, and
that's a different game.
So that's a little uncomfortable since the orcs are supposed to be if the orcs are supposed to be representative of the black community, it's like the black community actually chose an evil Dark Lord. So that's weird. Also, regular history happened along with this.
Shrek still exists in this world.
Shrek is still a relevant reference.
That makes no sense.
Wait, what? Also, the
that
Alamos.
That was my favorite line in the movie because it does put this in a world where they're totally aware. Like at that point, Shrek isn't a fantasy movie. At that point, Shrek is probably just like a historical documentary, actually.
Yeah, and it brings up a lot of questions of is Shrek kind of like blackface for orcs? How does that work? Would he still be played by Mike Myers in that awful accent? And then of course they mentioned the Alamo. What else did they mention? I was just some other historical events that happened the exact same way, even though orcs were probably present.
Right, and magic's a thing.
It definitely keeps it to the the bizarre rule of three that Star Trek created, where if you mention three great minds, two of those minds have to actually have existed, and then the third needs to be Zoltar the philosopher from SETI 7 or something like that. Yes, you are amongst the greatest minds in history. Einstein, Socrates, Agmalamon, the destroyer. Yes, of course we all know Agmalamon, the destroyer.
Of course, right up there with the great philosophers. So that was bugging me of just this is probably one of the most interesting parts of your world here of what happens on a day-to-day basis in a fantasy world of LA. If it still has if it has modern technology. I mean, they face down a guy with a broadsword as just a regular call-in. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh man, that's kind of cool. And I was wondering myself, do they have to be careful of what weapons they pick up? Cause it could be magically infused with lightning and shit. But
right.
No, he just picks up that shit. I'm like, And of course, the elves in this universe are parallels for the top 1%.
And they're hot.
And they're super beautiful.
That was the one thing that I said right away was, oh boy, the elves are hot. Oh, that's how we're going to go about this.
Well, the metaphor has got to be as obvious as possible. And it's, the elves are also the bad guys too, because they the wand belongs to one of these said elves, whose name I can't remember, and whose actress I can't remember.
Yeah, I couldn't pick him out of a line. So,
and whose motivation I can't remember.
I think they were terrorists, even though they were the ones in power.
They're the Inferni. They were like rogue elves that wanted to bring back the Dark Lord.
Which is dumb, because they're already in power.
Well, they did mention that she was the Dark Lord's lover at some point. Like, if that makes any sense.
I missed that part, apparently.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and then I was like, I'm not sure how much of a big of a spoiler is at this point, but near the end they reveal that Layla, the girl that has stolen the wand that Will Smith and Joel Edgerton's character have to protect, she's sisters with the main villain, which I didn't get until the very end. Like,
it didn't matter.
I wasn't sure if was that important? Should I have known about that? It doesn't matter anymore. Movie's almost over.
Well, and that's kind of, I think, like my biggest underlying issue with the movie. And I mean, I think we were about an hour into this, and I'm like, how much time is left in this movie? Wait, there's 51 minutes left to go in this thing. And like each time they get really close to like touching on a major mythology point, like right away with the guy with the broadsword, where we hear about the prophecy for the first time. Okay, so we're going to delve into that more, right? They never really got to that. They never really got to anything about the war 2,000 years ago. We just have to, accept this as fact, which I think works and doesn't, because I think that, we, as consumers don't have to be spoon-fed everything. Like, we can just take something at face value and say, oh, yeah, no, this would got it. War 2,000 years ago, understandable. But at the same time, it would have been really fucking cool to see, some information about this world that we're living in, that's been created. And we never got that. And I said about an hour into it, it's like, man, this almost could have been like a really great TV series or a miniseries.
Yeah, I really wish they had gotten into, because there's these two feds too. There's like FBI agents that of course have a human and an elf on the team, and they come in early to interrogate the guy that they picked up with the broadsword, the crazy guy who apparently is part of the cult. And he has a couple of lines, like the elf guy in particular seems to be important. And he has some sort of connection with our main villain. Says he's been chasing after her a long time. Mm-hmm. She's now vulnerable without the wand. He wants to try and get at her at this point. And we're like questioning, like, okay, is he going to use our heroes as bait, or is he going to turn on them? Is he really a bad guy? What's this guy's deal? And I don't know what his deal is.
Yeah, I still don't know, actually.
They never really give him a chance to do anything, so I'm not really sure what his deal was. I don't even know what his actor was. He was the actor for that freaking elf, but he
was hot.
Oh yeah, all the elves were unbelievably
even with
attractive.
That hairstyle, I'm still like, oh, he's kind of hot. Like he has like a 2006 era like Win Butler from Arcade Fire like hairstyle going on, but hey, he's still hot somehow.
Yeah, and I think my problem with him is that they keep going with him to give exposition that we find out, that our main heroes find out later without him. So I was just like, I don't understand the point of your scenes other than to prove that you exist for a possible sequel, which I hear is already happening.
Yeah, they already greenlit it.
Yep. So I think there's some of that going on here, of like some myth building for like sequel stuff. Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff in here that's just kind of missed opportunities. Like, hey, why have this badass federal agent team that seem to have a problem with orcs joining the team if they're not going to learn, like, oh, well, maybe an orc could be helpful or something, or have them do a little something other than be like the feds that the heroes call at one point just to try and get out of it. Get out of their situation, even though that doesn't seem to work either. Yeah, I mean, I do really like, again, the chemistry between Will Smith and Joel Edgerton. I just wish the trappings around the movie could have been a little bit more well thought out. Like they even mentioned at one point orcs can't play basketball, they don't have enough vertical jump, and that they're strong and that they have like
throwaway.
Yeah. And at that one point I was talking about too, like, oh, why not have them, like, later they go to an underground like club or whatever, like, oh, why not have a fighting pit with orcs in it, because that would be something they would be good at.
Yeah.
And then parallel it to like slave fights, like if we are going back to like an undermined culture and like that sort of thing, or like draw a parallel, like you have this big like metaphor, but you don't want to seem to use any of the other fantasy creatures to say about maybe the other parts of society.
Well, you know what this movie actually reminded me a bit of? It's actually District 9.
District 9, really?
Yeah,
I mean,
can see that.
You kind of look at the environment and it's like, oh yeah, we got this weird creature in this, like, we recognize the environment, and it's the creature, it's the, characters around that are the weird part.
Mm-hmm.
And for fantasy, that's a bit opposite how it normally is, because normally it's like, oh no, it's, this white guy gets thrown into a fantasy universe. He's the hero!
Oh, okay.
Both those movies are kind of the opposite.
Oh, okay.
It's just that District 9
we
does
even
something.
saw that too, how there were, like, the elf district, like, only, like, you had to go through a checkpoint and all that kind of stuff. And it's obvious that the elves want to separate themselves from everybody else, and they obviously have the money to do it. Which, I wish it hadn't been so heavy-handed, but at the same time, I think you kind of need to have that heavy ham-fistedness to get the point across in a situation like this.
Sure. Well, it reminds me of that point in Zootopia in the beginning too, where Zootopia is like, "Whoa, is this really about as much about race as I think it is?" And then they have that line of like Officer Hops going like, "Ooh, only bunnies can call each other cute." Like it's okay. It's just it's a thing. It's just that we can call each other cute, but other people can't. And it's so on the nose and obvious that you go like, okay, that's definitely what this film is about, so that no one can be mistaken that that's what it's about. Mm-hmm. So that later, when it's more subtle, people can pick up on it a little bit more. It's just that this film seems to be more focused on the, fantasy as a trapping. Like, isn't it cool? Isn't it cool that we made a cop gritty action film with fantasy just kind of thrown in there?
God, I'm so glad they got away from the cop thing right away, like within the first third of the movie too. Like I'm all about that.
Yeah, and it's also kind of tone deaf too, because of like watching these cops be real dicks to these guys, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's really hard in this type of environment to have a whole bunch of sympathy for any of these cops. And it's even hard to have sympathy for Will Smith's character, who is just like, I'm just doing this because I need my pension or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
it's like, I'm 5 years from retirement. Like, bitch, please. Like, what?
Hey, look, he could have died if he said he was anything less than 5 years from retirement. That's the cutoff point. If you say like you're 1 year from retirement, or God forbid 3 weeks from retirement, you're done for.
And we hit that trope right away in the movie, and I don't know if maybe you want to put a spoiler alert on the episode beforehand, but as soon as that one guy is like, oh yeah, 4 kids, 5th on the way, we're inducing labor next week, I'm like, he's not making it out of this.
Yeah, I'm like, oh man, oh well, c'est la vie, my friends. It's over. Wrap it up, Johnny. I did.
Say goodbye to the wife and kids, because next scene you're in, we're not gonna.
You're going, boy.
Yeah, another thing too is that for introducing orcs as an element where orcs are supposed to be super strong and have like great big super strength, they don't really do a lot with that. I mean, Nick throws a couple people through some walls and stuff every once in a while, but most of the people that are chasing them end up being humans.
Yeah.
Who get murdered by the dark elf terrorist mostly. And so there's just not a whole lot of orc combat, which you thought, even by the end, I'm like, oh, they'll recruit a bunch of orcs to come help them out, and that'll be badass and awesome. And like, they never really like show that a bunch. And I was like, oh man, that'd have been kind of neat. Also, yeah. I mean, the humans that are chasing them because they want this wand, I always thought that it could have been a little bit more like they never really explain why the humans are trying to get it, except for the one gangster Poison wants to walk again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, that could be a really neat element of having not just him, but like a bunch of people that are like either, I don't know, maybe they're handicapped or they have a family member that's dying, or I don't know, there's something really sympathetic about their backstory that they need magic to fix. And they're all just desperate enough to want to get this wand. Like that might make them
potentially kill themselves over it.
Yeah, to make them willing to go, I don't care if there's only a 1% chance that I might not blow up when I touch it. I need to try it.
I had a problem with the writing of, I guess, and I mean, like, maybe this is just the fact that, like, we've seen these tropes in movies before, but okay, these are really stereotypically written gangsters. Like, these are, there's nothing unique about this. We get it. They're, the gangbangers from LA kind of thing. And I felt kind of gross watching those scenes because I'm like, there's really nothing unique about this. And it almost felt stereotypical. Yeah,
Poison is especially kind of, a stereotype. Well, I mean, his name is Poison.
Yeah.
Draw your own conclusions. I was just thinking of, like, it was another moment during this film where I'm like, man, I would have done something different here. I would have made it orcs. I would have made orcs chasing after them. And I would have had at first the orcs be seemingly to be these bad guys that want the wand and go like, oh shit, they want the wand. They want to bring back the Dark Lord. And then you do the twist of, oh shit, it's the elves that want to bring back the Dark Lord. You just thought the orcs were the bad guys because you've seen a bunch of fantasy movies. And we'd slowly realize that the orcs, all have like, no, we all have like families at home. We need, like, they're all desperate to save someone that they love or to fix something about themselves that can't be fixed by magic. Like, give them like give it a semblance of, oh, maybe the audience can be tricked into thinking and having a prejudged notion of who the bad guys are, and then pull the rug out from under us and show us that nope, it was the 1% turning us against each other like it always is. And then I was also confused of the metaphor for the terrorists because I thought, like, are the elves the representations of like white collar crime or maybe organized crime? And it's like no, they're definitely terrorists by the end of it. And also they parkour fight for some reason.
Because it's sick. But again, it's not like we were able to really see too much of it.
Yeah, again, I actually made a reference while we were watching this movie. Like, Nick kept saying, he's like, yeah, these aren't elves. I'm like, yeah, they look more like they're from Underworld, to be honest.
Yeah, I started to treat them like, no, they're definitely vampires. Like, they look like vampires, they dress like the vampires from Underworld, and they're hot. They seem to be able to get stabbed multiple times. Like, nope, you got to use a wooden stake to the heart, guys. That's the only way to do it.
He said that enough where I kind of forgot.
Shot in the chest like 3 freaking times.
Yeah, and they never explain that
at like 5 feet away.
They never explain that either, too. And I'm like, okay, so are elves immortal? Like, do they not get physically harmed? Like, what is the deal? Like, why can they take shotgun shells to the fucking face?
I actually started to forget after a while that they weren't vampires. Like, oh shit, that's right, elves, not the other thing.
Yeah, don't watch movies with me. I'll make fun of it. Make fun of it enough that you'll actually question the reality of the movie.
Yeah, that's still better.
Well, and I kind of get that feeling too now. Like, looking back on watching it this morning, it's like, yeah, there was really no point where I'm like, oh yeah, these are elves. I was like, oh, these just feel like, like not. I didn't like vampire didn't cross my head, but at the same time, I was at every point like, right, these are the elves, right, got to remember that. It's like, yeah, I know these kind of wrote their own rules for elf powers, I guess, for this movie.
And so, yeah, I know we've been, especially I've been nitpicking the movie a lot. And if you're listening at home going like, wait, I like the movie, and you just bring up nitpicks, most of those stuff they're just small things that don't really matter. You're right. I just don't really have a whole lot other stuff to talk about in this film.
I loved
sorry.
I loved the movie. I thought it was, I was a fun movie. I went into it not expecting, high fantasy like Lord of the Rings. I went into it with my knowledge of the trailer of, oh, this is going to be a kind of like cops in the real world, but there's fantasy creatures and there's a cover up, and I'm glad it got away from from the really like heavy-handed like Blue Lives Matter stuff at the beginning. I was kind of worried that it was going to go in that direction, and it didn't. And it became a pretty accessible action movie that was a lot of fun to watch. And I like the world they created. And you know, I probably am going to watch the second one because I'd love to see how they expand on this world that they made.
I would like to see a sequel written by another screenwriter.
Yeah,
I want to see someone, because this is a good fucking premise, and I know it probably sounds like I absolutely man, he hates this movie. I actually don't. I think it's absolutely fine. I think it is, for me, I know that a lot of it is just like, man, I thought this was going to be a little bit more of a more challenging movie, or at least maybe a so bonkers crazy movie with some I think maybe if I had saw more of the action and it was just shot better, I would have had a better feeling of this movie overall, because at least I could go, fuck yeah, that was an awesome part, remember that? That was cool. But yeah, it's not like this movie is terrible. I think that's an extreme reaction that some of the critics are having. I don't know, Travis, what do you think about it overall?
The biggest thing I can say about this movie is I was bored by it.
Really?
Like, it kind of it gives you this premise like, hey, look at this, isn't this cool? I'm like, yeah, you're gonna show me with that? No, literally and figuratively, it didn't show you much, because it's like, no, we're gonna show like a pixie once and maybe a centaur in the background. Otherwise, it's just kind of like this allegory for black people, which I think actually hurt itself by having Will Smith, because I'm like, yeah, but he's the black guy that no white people like. He's the black guy white people like. So I'm like, getting a different actor might actually have helped this movie.
You said they shouldn't have gotten the whitest black person ever?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Like, it doesn't make a difference if it's Will Smith, I guess. And again, because even if the story itself was interesting, I'm like, yeah, if I could have seen the action scenes, at least then it would have been something to watch, but I could barely even see those. Plus, the whole entire thing, it's like, no, elves, they are the most powerful ruling class of this world, but they're also terrorists trying to destroy the world. I'm like, but why? Why would, no, like, if I was ruling the world, I'd be like, okay, I'm fine with this, everyone else fuck off. No, let's destroy and bring back the Dark Lord to enslave everyone.
You don't know, maybe the Dark Lord has a great health plan. You don't know.
Maybe, but if they're seemingly immortal, what do they need health plans for?
I'm not sure. You bring up many points I thought about, but I will admit I did like the buddy bromance that sprouted between Joel Edgerton and Will Smith. And I was surprising that Joel Smith actually outacted some of the people in this movie, which is something I never thought I would say about Joel Edgerton. Which I don't think I didn't. I don't think I even said it in the first place, because I fucked up and I said Will Smith instead.
It's how you just made a ship name.
Damn
so,
it!
Congratulations,
Joel Smith. I like it.
I will say it does have one of my favorite lines is somebody who, when I play any like fantasy kind of situations, like be it like when I eventually roll into D&D again, or when I'm playing Skyrim or anything like that, where they're just both laying on the ground and he goes, "Hey, Nick," and he's like, yeah, Ward, fuck magic.
Fuck magic.
I'm like, oh man, like every single fantasy person who enjoys fantasy out there, like a whole bunch of them just like stood up and was like, goddamn right.
So yeah, with that, we'll just go into our ratings, and then we'll hopefully go into a spoiler section, talk about the end of the film a little bit, because I did want to talk about that. I'll start.
Okay.
I mean, this film for me it ended up being straight down the middle. I'm gonna give it three exploding humans that you might actually have to inhale once the room clears of human dust out of 5. That's a really long qualifier. But
you might want to, acronym that or something. I don't know.
I really thought that this, like, when I hear a movie is going to be a fantasy, a modern day action movie with a fantasy element thrown into it, directed by the same guy who gave us Training Day and Fury, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I want to see that. Even if it's bad, it'll be super fun to talk about. And I was just like expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but I was expecting something different.
You're expecting more in general, one way or the other.
And it did affect how I viewed the film, which, may be unfair, but I don't know. I try to be as fair as possible with it. But ultimately, I did come away slightly disappointed. Travis, what'd you feel overall?
Yeah, like I said, I was mostly just kind of bored during the movie. I got almost angry when I heard they're making they have that featurette showing the backstory of the world. I'm like, oh, so basically the part I wanted to see about this, the part I kept asking about, wait, no, that's interesting. Give me that. Anytime they talked about this world, where it was like, wait, how does the Alamo happen? What is Shrek like in this universe? How is it different?
Let me read the codex, goddammit.
Yes, I'd much rather sit here and read the Inquisition style codex than the actual fucking movie.
Oh yeah, you bring that up, but holy shit, how great would that have been to see oh yeah, and in the Alamo, not only was it the Mexican army and the United States army, but also there were orcs there.
Right, it's no, the Mexican army almost won with their when they released the Chupacabras, but no, the orcs came out with it in the end.
Do orcs get 3/5 of a vote? What is this world here? I don't get it.
No. Overall, just because of the fact that not only did they promise this interesting premise and then kind of didn't deliver on it, I'm giving it a 4 out of 10.
All right. So, Pher, this is your first time rating a movie for Netflix and Kill. You just heard us. I give it out of 5. Travis gives it out of 10. You can give it out of whatever you want. You can give it out of 67. Okay. So, go nuts. I'm interested to hear your rating on it, since I know you probably liked it more than we did.
Yeah, I mean, I liked, it's one of those things where I think I loved the premise and the idea more than I liked the idea was really good, but the execution was not as great. And it was unfortunate because, it is a really big world that you can do a lot with. And I think that if it were written better, who's the writer again? I know when
Max
that came
Landis.
out, yeah, Max. Oh, that's right. The sexual abuser.
That guy.
He's not a human being, and neither is David Ayers. I think if you attach a different group of people to it, and flesh out on the world a little bit, honestly, it's on Netflix. I can pause Netflix. I can come back to it. I have no problem with it if it's they can make a 3-hour movie. Give me an extra 30 minutes of additional backstory to the world. Flesh out on some things. That's great. I would love it. But because there's that, I mean, it's kind of middle of the road for me too. I'm going to go with 6 Academy Award winning Suicide Squads out of 10 for this movie. Because I think it could have been really, really good if there had just been even minor things. You look at it and you're like, oh, why'd they go that direction instead of this direction? Would have been easier, but it is what it is. It is what it is. It's a fun movie. I would watch it again. I'd have no problem watching it again, just because it is a fun film.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point you bring up too about the Netflix model. Why not throw an extra half hour on there?
I mean, it's basically Netflix's strength.
Yeah, why not use that binge methodology to your advantage? If people are willing to sit down and watch 8 hours of Stranger Things in one sitting, they can sit down for an extra half hour for Bright, I think.
Yeah, fuck, put a 4-hour cut of a movie on Netflix. I don't give a shit. I'll watch half of it during the day. I'll go out for lunch. I'll go run some errands, and I'll come back and watch the other half. I don't care.
Fucking intermission. Yeah, let's bring it back. Old school. I like it. All right. So with that, we're going to wrap it up here. If you don't want to stick around for the spoiler section, you want to give Bright a check out, give it a chance yourself. Totally understand that. Good luck to you. Hopefully you're not a critic, because I don't think you're going to be, statistically, I don't think you'll be enjoying it. But if you're literally anyone else, you probably will have a good time. With that, if you want to check out some of our back catalog, you can go through our other Netflix and Kill episodes on our iTunes channel or on our iTunes feed, or some of our just regular episodes of the UGO podcast. We have some other, sometimes we interview people just as great and interesting as Pher. Not always, because, that's a standard that's hard to hit. But, every once in a while we get up there.
Maybe a few people that would disagree.
I'd love to hear the disagreements. So I will fight them on that. Because it's been absolutely lovely having Pher here. Thank you so much, Pher. Would you like to mention the people again where they can find you and some of your stuff if they would like to follow you.
Yeah, if you're ever in the Eau Claire, Wisconsin region, come on out. Keep an eye on what things are. Come see Clearwater comedy shows in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. If you're in the Twin Cities, definitely go check out Fearless Comedy Productions. We've got our big fundraiser coming up here in April, the Die Laughing Comedy Marathon. It is a 50-hour comedy festival. Last year, I performed a 1-hour comedy set at 6:30 in the morning. It was great. It was amazing. A lot of fun. That's coming up in April, so keep an eye on that. So go like Fearless Comedy Productions on Facebook. Go like Clearwater Comedy, and follow me on Twitter at Professor Pher on Twitter. And I also have a Facebook page, Pher Struz, which I don't update nearly as much as I should, but I might as well. And I don't know, check me out. Come see me. I'm gonna actually come hang out at KitsuneCon this year, I think, with you guys, because it sounds, I haven't been to KitsuneCon in a few years, and I miss it. And I had a lot of fun the last time I was there. So.
Oh, yep. Or Travis, you and I are both officially registered as of yesterday, so it's going to be super fun. Man, we love KitsuneCon.
I actually asked them how many panels a fellow would have to do to be able to get a badge. So as soon as I hear back from that, I'm just going to start submitting as many comedy shows and improv. You guys want to do improv with me at Kitsune?
Let's do it.
Do improv?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do improv together. I'll sign us up for. I'll do an improv panel with you guys.
I hope it's okay. Decided. I've never done it before, but
it's fine. Practice. Go to some improv. You guys live in Green Bay, right?
Yeah, there's some improv classes we could take.
Yeah, go to improv jams. They're a lot of fun.
I would love to run a panel with you again. We've done that before, and it was absolutely a fun time. So I'm even more pumped now than ever. But we are going to take a small musical break, and we'll be back with the spoiler section right after this. And welcome to the spoiler section for Bright. Spoiler: the film is not actually very bright.
No,
one of the
it's
problems
very
with
misleading.
Yeah, that's so sorry for those you expecting a brightly lit film. It's unfortunate, much mismarketing on that point.
Well, I mean, what is this? It Comes at Night? Come on now.
the title of the film with the poster with Will Smith on the poster with the large words "bright" is also in and of itself a spoiler, guys. Like, I think they gave away their own movie.
So to no one's surprise, Will Smith turns out to be a Bright.
What?
I actually really like when he does become a Bright at first, because it's like, it's one of those more realistic chosen one things of like, holy shit, I'm doing it. What do I do? Like, and I love that Joel Edgerton's like,
when she had to yell the war word at him, I thought that was so good. He just didn't pick it up and explain what to do. She's like, you have to say the thing.
Yeah, because at first he asks like Joel Edgerton, he's like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like, zap her. Like, I don't know how to zap her. And then she's like, I don't know what she says. Like, Fusroda. I don't know. Like, that would have been funny. But so I did like that moment there, a very Will Smithian moment. That I did appreciate. What I did not appreciate was the blatant theft of a plot line from Training Day in the middle of it, where it turns out that the orc that Nick's character, or Nick, let go actually comes back later, and is actually the son of one of the gangsters that catches them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, I can't kill this guy. He saved my life, so I can't kill him. So I'm going to walk out of the room and let you kill him.
Right.
I'm like, oh, cool.
It's a Chekhov orc that didn't pay off.
Yeah, and I was like, but if it's not going to help him in any way, then why was it important in the plot to begin with? Because it doesn't get him out of his situation at all.
In fact, he dies.
In fact, no, he gets shot. And then the girl who has pulled a weird move of hiding the wand in her wrist or something.
Yeah.
Like, that was weird. I mean, it was kind of cool, like how she just pulls it out of her slit wrist. I was like, damn, okay. She uses it to resurrect him. To which point I was like, wait a second. So you could use the wand this whole time? Like this whole time.
That's kind of what I kept thinking of when like they were in all these situations. I'm like, why isn't she just like? But they do kind of address that because like her even using it to bring him back from the dead, like literally almost killed her.
But I mean, I assume. Yeah. Like, I assume resurrection would be like a high level thing. You couldn't be using to, blast a few people to get them out of their way so they don't have to be in that situation in the first place, maybe?
Yeah, it clearly didn't affect Will Smith any, poorly when he disintegrated the other elf because, picked it up, said the word, and he was fine. But yeah, you're right. Like, the whole time, even that fight scene in the grocery store or in the convenience store, I'm just like, she's not really helping them at all. Like, what is...
No. Like, she couldn't make a couple swipes with the wand at all. Although, I do like that fight scene now that you mention it. I like where Joel Edgerton is fighting a car. That's pretty cool. I like that. More of that. There should have had more orcs fighting cars.
I could dig it.
We should have orcs in the next Fast and the Furious movie.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, let's do it.
Can't make it any weirder.
I would actually appreciate that.
I'd be okay with a whole fleet of movies set in this universe. I'm down with it.
Mm-hmm. A romantic comedy, but with orcs. So I did like the. I mean, it was weird because you can't help but draw the parallel to the same scene in David Ayer's previous film Training Day, where Ethan Hawke gets out of his situation because he saved a girl earlier, proving that doing the right thing is not only the morally right thing to do, it will actually pay off for you later in the real world.
It'll save your ass.
That always happens.
Yeah, sort of a karma thing, like that sort of lesson. And so it's weird that he rips it off here, but to not give the same lesson. It's like, well, he was morally on the high ground when he got shot, so that was cool.
Yeah, but it doesn't go the other way either. It just that scene was pointless. It didn't disprove it one way or the other,
Well, I mean, it does help with the case of Joel Edgerton getting blooded by the end of it, which is like a orc's rite of passage, which I also wish I knew more about them being blooded, because I'm not sure how big of a deal that is to Nick or to the... I mean, I know it's a big deal to the orc community. And that it's a reason, if you're not blooded, you have to file your fangs down in your teeth, I guess? Because that was some sort of thing. That's why Joel Edgerton doesn't have pronounced lower teeth like the other orcs do. So when he gets blooded later in film after he saves Will Smith and after the big climax and all the other orcs show up late to the fucking party before actually they could have given any sort of help at all. They cut their fists and raise their fists up in the air like, yeah, you're blooded, you're a full-fledged orc, and he's like, yeah, and he's almost crying, and I was like, oh, so this was a big deal to you. I just never got that before. I also never understood, because he does say he's wanted to be a cop since he was a kid. But he never really says why, or why it's so important to him that he would risk having his own community shut him out. Well, and
considering that we know that Shrek exists in this universe and clearly modern movies exist, maybe he saw a film by David Ayers called Training Day when he was a child.
I saw Training Day and I just thought, man, that Ethan Hawke had the right idea. I would, that would have been a clever thing too, to just have Training Day exist as a movie in this universe.
That'd be fine.
That'd be funny. So there are certain things that I wish that they could have had a stronger emotional impact if we had understood the motivation behind them a little bit more. Although I did like the scene where he does reveal to Will Smith that he let the kid go because he legitimately got the wrong kid. And he was like, fuck, I didn't know what to do because I knew that the human cops were going to come up and just see an orc in a hoodie and just fucking open fire on him.
Yeah, I actually did like that part.
And Will Smith goes hey, why didn't you tell me? I mean, but he is honest, it might not have mattered, but it could have. And I'm like, wow, he doesn't even say that would have changed everything. He's like, well, it might have changed my mind.
Well, to be fair, he's kind of an ass in those movies, so I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't tell him. Fuck that.
He's one of those assholes that recognizes he is an asshole, so that excuses his assholery.
Game recognized
if you
game.
Then the FBI agents come back around, and I go, "Oh shit, they were in this movie." In which I don't think they even have like a line, like they just have a whole big scene of where Joel Edgerton just blabs. He basically recaps the whole movie for us,
the whole plot.
And I think like Will Smith and him kind of like decided like, okay, so there was no wand. I'm not a bright. We're gonna all just keep this under wraps, and all the Fed guys are cool with that because they want to keep all magical artifacts and all that shenanigans under control. And so like, yeah, so some cloak and dagger stuff going on. And they end without having to lose any of their jobs, even though Will Smith shot 4 police officers.
Yep. He murdered some people.
So, I'm not sure how well that translates with, hey, a guy that even though he was proven justified after killing 4 fellow officers, and how many other people in this film got to keep his job even though there was questionable circumstances. And I don't know. So that felt a little weird to me. I mean, it's better that, hey, they're the heroes of the film, so it's like that's what's supposed to happen.
Excuse me.
But still, it was kind of like, I don't know, them covering up what happened to make them look more like the heroes, even though they were the heroes of the film, didn't escape the parallel of like, the cops covered up and didn't tell the whole truth during the story.
Protected their own.
Yep. So, and that was played off as a good thing in the movie, which was like, that's questionable.
Movie kind of ends how it starts.
So, yeah, even with the fairy, now that I think about it. I don't know, what'd you feel about the ending, Pher?
I mean, I thought it met its rightful conclusion. I think I would have liked to have maybe seen there be a few more consequences for the idea that oh yeah, we've got dirty cops in the LAPD who are like out to racially profile their fellow officers. I think I would like to see more consequences for that. I think it would have made a really good point. But also at the same time, I don't go to a David Ayers movie to see a
thought piece,
political statement. So I think it was what it was, and it ended kind of the way it was. Oh, he's a bright. It's shocking. Good for him. They win. Everybody's fine. And we're gonna probably see a lot more of the results from this movie in the sequel, which I'll watch. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair assessment.
I think fuck magic. That might be one of my favorite lines in the movie.
That was pretty good.
That was, I can kind of tell that was written for fantasy fans out there. Like, I feel like that was maybe like the wink at the camera kind of moment.
Hey, Nick, fuck magic. Yeah, fuck magic. That was a pretty good camaraderie thing between the two of them. Just like, yep, that sucked. Hope we never have to do that again. Foreshadowing for the sequel.
Woo!
So yeah, I'm interested what they do with a sequel to this movie. I get another team on it. I would actually like to see Will Smith and Joel Edgerton team up again, because I thought that was one of the elements that really worked about it.
I have a feeling they're probably not going to be in the sequel. That's my guess, is we're probably in a new cast.
I mean, probably. I mean, I'm wondering how much of that $90 million of a budget was Will Smith's price tag.
They certainly didn't spend it on lighting.
Nope.
Definitely not.
Come on, we had to get Will Smith. We couldn't afford lamps, guys. Just couldn't afford them.
I just want Centaur Cops, the TV show. That's
Centaur Cops. I just want that version, like the version of being swatted in that universe is being centaured. Like, that would be pretty cool.
All of a sudden, a bunch of horses kick down your door.
Yep. And yeah, so I guess like the main thing is just hope for some more I don't know, expansion for the next sequel. I think is what I'm hoping for.
Word.
Anything else we didn't spoil? That we wanted to cover in the spoiler section? I think we pretty much covered everything. It's not a huge, shockingly twisty, turny movie.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
So yeah, well, that was the That was our review of Bright, guys. I hope you guys had fun. We definitely had some fun talking about it. I'm glad we actually. I was worried. I'm like, man, I hope I have enough to, talk about at length without just going into nitty gritty detail. But I think we came out all right. Thanks again for coming out with us. It was great having you on, like always.
Yeah, Nick, Travis, I enjoy being on the podcast, and have me on again sometime. I'm down.
We will definitely have you on again.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have another Netflix movie. And if we have a sequel, you're definitely our first call. You're gonna be our first.
I will answer the fur line. I will. Oh man.
We'll have to go on a ride along ourselves at some point, have our own adventure for a day. But until then, we're going to call it a day for now. And thank you guys so much for listening. We are Unapologists, and we're out.